Hello there everyone, welcome to this week's Gran Turismo 7 Daily Race and Strategy Guide. We're off to the Red Bull Ring in Austria in the Group 3 machinery for what is a very popular combination for Daily Race, although I can't actually really remember the last time we were there. Besides that though, we do have some fairly interesting settings for this one. We've got tyre wear at ×4, fuel at ×1, it's just the racing soft tyres available. There is a mandatory pit stop in there, BOP is on, damage is a grid start with a false start check, which is one of the very first times I can remember we've had a grid start in a non-Super Formula or X2019 for Daily Race. Custom slipstream seems to be the thing now. Settings allowed, you've got your brake balance, you've got your differential, and you've got your suspension, which I've actually forgot to put on the list there. Now, before I went into the race, the first thing I wanted to take a little bit of a look at here was the difference between changing the tyres and not changing the tyres. Coming into the pit lane at the Red Bull Ring, do be careful of the line to the left hand side. If you cross that too much, you can pick up a 3-second penalty. Obviously you drive the car in for quite a bit of the pit lane here as well, so there is time to be made up, time to be gained, but there's also the potential to hit the grass and spin the car as well. So maybe do a few practice pit entries, always advisable at the Red Bull Ring. So first pit stop here, we are going to change the tyres. Stationary time 4.9 seconds. Coming out the pit lane here, we get control of the car just as we come round the corner, and then coming in for the second pit stop. Let's see how much time we save if we don't change the tyres. Now, I'm not a fan of making pointless pit stops, as you are aware, but it is an option in this one. Stationary time 1.7 seconds, so that's a saving of 3.2 seconds if we don't change the tyres compared to if we do change the tyres, which is fairly significant. So armed with that information, we entered into our race in the Nissan GTR from 2018, and as I mentioned, it is a grid start with a false start check, which I completely forgot about as the race got underway and subsequently picked up a penalty. Now, as you can see, it's not too much of a penalty given we're starting at the back of the grid, and it's a short run down to turn 1. So there's going to be all sorts of shenanigans and chaos going on these grid starts. But I must say, I am a fan because it's been something we've been needing for a long time. Until they improve the rolling starts in Gran Turismo 7, which we know they can do. I know they have the option to give you a very close double file rolling start in the game, which they don't use, but I know it's an option. But until they start using that, then I think grid starts actually give us a little bit of first lap excitement. Now, my kind of start went from bad to worse because we picked up a half-second penalty for running a little bit wide on the exit of the hairpin, actually trying to avoid the car in front of me. So with that half-second penalty, there was no point pushing too much, so we'll just fast forward through the rest of the first lap here, serve that penalty, and we'll pick up the action as we come out of the last corner, because I believe that's a Turkish flag. The Turkish driver has maybe been ran a little bit wide. That's going to allow us to go down the inside into turn 1. It's not a move I ever really like making it, but in this case we had no real choice. Our line gets compromised. The Mercedes is going to come back on the inside. We're going to try and pick up that custom slipstream and see if we can stay ahead, which we do at this point, and in fairness to the Mercedes driver, they just tuck in behind, which is the sensible thing to do. We're going to get a decent exit here in the Nissan GTR on the fellow Nissan GTR ahead of us. In that slipstream, you can see how powerful it is, and we're going to get a little bit of a sniff into the braking zone at turn 3, and we got a little bit wrong. Now, we were going to career into the back of the Porsche there. Now, we did brake in time, we were going to make the corner, we just didn't really have the space to make the corner with the car in front of us. Now, we do make contact with the German as well, so I did apologise for that, or I do apologise for that, but thankfully it never ruined their race. So a couple of laps later, we did manage to successfully complete that move down into the same corner, got the car down the inside, made the apex, got the better exit, and that was us up into P11. So jumping forward a lap, we caught up with this triplet of cars. Now you can see one of the cars is indicating, and I thought that meant they were going to go into the pits. I was kind of in an awkward situation here. I was thinking, do I pit, do I not pit? Surely they're going to pit. If they pit, I won't pit. Then none of them pitted. I then thought about pitting, stamped on the brakes, realised I wasn't going to get into the pits without getting a 3-second penalty, and then carried on. We fortunately managed to get down the inside of one of the cars into the last corner, and then the two cars in front of us, the Porsche and Genesis, going to go side by side through turn 1. That compromises the Genesis quite a lot, allows us to get a kind of switchback move. We're in the slipstream here of the Porsche. It'd be very nice to get past all three of these cars in a couple of corners, because we are losing a little bit of time. They kind of go for a little bit of a late defence in my opinion, but all good. It broke a little bit late though. We're going to get a little bit of a switchback here on the hairpin, on the power, nice and early. We've got the inside for the next corner, and that should be pretty much job done. The Porsche does tuck back into the slipstream of our car, but we're not going to give this one up. We're going to stay into the inside, brake on time, hit the apex, and that was job done at this point. So a lot of the cars pitted on lap 6. We carried on for an additional lap. Now I was kind of swivering about maybe doing the no tyre change strategy, but the tyre wear was starting to get a little bit severe, and I thought I had enough time to get into the pits and get back out in front of those cars that we had just been fighting. So we're going to swoop into the pits here. As I said earlier, there is time to be made up in that pit lane if you start to really push the boundaries. Changing the tyres, of course, 4.9 seconds stationary. And let's take a look at those all-important pit losses. Now, the Red Bull Ring is quite a difficult one to work out just because of the nature of the pit lane, but my best kind of calculations are, if you do change the tyres, you'll be stationary. Sorry, you'll lose 22.3 seconds in the pits. If you don't change the tyres, obviously you save those 3.2 seconds and you'll be stationary. I keep saying stationary. You'll lose 19.1 seconds. So that's my best guesses, not guesses, calculations for the pit losses at the Red Bull Ring in Group 3. But that was all that really happened. We emerged from the pits in P7. The Belgian driver behind us binned it to allow us to move up into P6. We had reasonable pace towards the end. We were catching the cars in front, but not enough to actually overtake them. And we bring this one home in P6. Only 16.5 minutes for the race length. Should be 13 laps, minimum 12 laps. Not quite getting the race distance right there. Polyphony Digital. So let's move on to the race strategy. Now the first thing you do need to consider in this one, it is a grid start with a full start check, so make sure you have the brake or the handbrake applied, and also remember that the MR cars should get off the line better than FR cars. Also, traction control, probably pretty much a must for any car on that start as well. Now there is going to be a lot of chaos down into turn 1. The cars are going to be very closely contained with each other. Into that first corner, then down the next straight into the hairpin, so expect a lot of carnage. It's going to happen, especially with that custom slipstream on the run down to the hairpin for the first time. It's going to be fun and games. Enjoy it, hate it, you'll be either one or the other. Let's move on to the strategy though. You can do a no tyre change strategy in this one. You will save 3.2 seconds in the pits, which is quite a lot of time, and if that can get you away from people that are battling, then maybe as a strategy you can make work. The person that did finished in third place in the race that we just took a look at in the Genesis did the no tyre change strategy, and they got to the end with only about 10% on the tyres, but their pace actually wasn't too terrible. So maybe as this week goes on, maybe if the BRZ's actually competitive, you could see people doing the no tyre change strategy a little bit more often. I think the majority of people though are going to change the tyres because the tyre wear is quite bad if you don't do the tyre change, and you can basically split it down the middle for most people. 5 to 6 laps on the first stint, 5 to 6 laps on the second stint. You have the option to go a little bit longer until like lap 7 like we did, or you also have the option to maybe pit a little bit earlier on lap 3. But that is your strategy options for this one. Actually quite an interesting race. It's not the ideal settings. A couple of additional laps, real slipstream would have made this race better, but we do have that grid start, so credit where credit's due. There is some strategy options in there, and Group 3 at the Red Bull Ring is always pretty good fun, although with these settings I can see a little bit of chaos ensuing into that hairpin especially. But thank you very much for watching folks. I'll catch you on the next one. Goodbye now.